Welcome back, everyone. Ready for another deep dive?
Always.
Okay, good. Because today we're going deep into murder and manslaughter.
Sounds intense.
Oh, it is. We got a whole bunch of articles, even some YouTube videos to go through, all about, for really serious crimes.
And I bet there's a lot more to it than people think.
Yeah, exactly. Like it gets complicated. Like, did you know that you could get charged with second-degree murder for like accidentally killing someone while you're street racing?
Whoa, seriously?
Yeah, even if you didn't, mean to hurt anyone.
That's wild. So, how does the law even figure that out?
That's what we're going to unpack, like what's the
Uh-huh.
difference between murder and manslaughter? And what about all those in-between situations?
Yeah, those gray areas where it's not so clear cut.
Exactly. So to start, let's talk about homicide. Basically, it's when one person kills another.
Simple enough.
But get this, it can be lawful or unlawful.
Wait, what? How's that possible?
Right. So lawful killings, those are like, self-defense.
Oh, right. If you're in danger and have to protect yourself.
Yeah. Or like state-sanctioned executions.
That's the government deciding it's okay to kill someone.
Yeah, heavy stuff. And then there's unlawful killings. That's where, that's where murder and manslaughter come in.
Okay, so those are killings that aren't justified by the law.
Right. And it all comes down to like the reason behind the killing.
Yeah. Like what was going on in the person's head when it happened?
Exactly. It's not just about the act of killing itself, it's the why.
And that's where that fancy Latin term mens rea comes in, right?
Mens rea. Oh yeah, I've heard that on like law shows.
It means guilty mind. Basically, the law wants to figure out the mental state of the killer.
So like were they planning it out or did it happen in a moment of, I don't know, rage or something?
Exactly. Those are two very different scenarios, and the law treats them differently.
Okay, so let's say someone plans a murder like weeks in advance versus someone who just snaps and kills someone during a fight.
That premeditation, the planning part, that's key. The first one, the planned murder, that's first-degree murder. Super serious.
And the second one, like during a fight, what's that?
That's more likely second-degree murder. Still intentional, but there wasn't that calculated planning beforehand.
So they both meant to kill the person, but the level of planning makes a difference.
A huge difference, especially when it comes to punishment. We're talking, potentially 25 years to life in prison.
Whoa, that's a lot.
It is. It shows how seriously the law takes these crimes.
So where does manslaughter fit in? It's still a killing, but
But it's different from murder. It's kind of like a middle ground. There's still
Yeah.
a loss of life, but it's usually not premeditated.
so it's more about like recklessness or negligence.
Right. Or sometimes what they call crimes of passion.
Ooh, those are always dramatic. Like I don't know, someone catches their spouse cheating and things get out of hand.
Yep, that's a classic example of voluntary manslaughter. They meant to kill in that moment, but it was driven by emotion, not careful planning.
Okay, I see. So voluntary manslaughter is that like heat of the moment thing. What about those other types you mentioned?
Well, we've got involuntary manslaughter. That's where the killing is unintentional, but it happened because someone was reckless or negligent.
Like someone doing something dangerous and not thinking about the consequences.
Exactly. Like, imagine a construction worker, ignoring safety rules, and someone ends up dying. Didn't mean to kill, but their actions were reckless and led to a death.
Got it. And then there's vehicular manslaughter.
And that's the one. Sadly, it's pretty common. Any death caused by reckless driving, speeding, or, driving under the influence, that falls under vehicular manslaughter.
Wow. So just driving, something we do every day, can turn deadly if you're not careful.
It definitely can. It shows how important it is to be responsible behind the wheel.
Okay, so we've got these three types of manslaughter: voluntary, involuntary, and vehicular. All unplanned, but the circumstances, they make a big difference.
Definitely. And even though the penalties for manslaughter are usually less severe than for murder, they can still involve prison time.
So it's a reminder that even when a killing isn't intentional, there are still consequences.
Absolutely. Actions have consequences, and sometimes those consequences are devastating.
I think a lot of people watching those true crime shows get confused about this stuff. Like, where's the line between a crime of passion and second-degree murder? It seems pretty blurry sometimes.
Yeah, it can be. A lot depends on this idea of adequate provocation. Like in that cheating spouse example, walking in on that scene, the law might say, Yeah, that's enough to trigger a violent reaction.
So it's not just about being angry, it's about whether a reasonable person would have, like, snapped in that situation.
Exactly. But there's also this thing called a cooling off period. If there's time between the provocation and the killing, even just a few minutes, it becomes harder to argue heat of passion.
Hold on, wait. The law says how long it takes to cool off? I mean, how can they
Yeah.
know that?
It's definitely tricky, and it's caused a lot of debate. There are some real-life cases that have really tested this whole idea of murder versus manslaughter.
Oh, like what? I'm always up for some legal drama.
Well, the trials of George Zimmerman and Conrad Murray are prime examples. Both cases sparked huge arguments about whether it was murder, manslaughter, self-defense. It was a total legal minefield.
Okay, so these cases show us that the law isn't always so clear-cut, right? It's open to interpretation.
Exactly. And that makes it even more important to understand how these laws work and how they're applied in real life.
Which brings us to another big question. How do you even prove someone's intent? Like, it's all about what was going on inside their head.
That's one of the biggest challenges in these cases. It's not always easy to untangle someone's thoughts and motivations.
And I bet defense attorneys have a field day with that, don't they?
Oh, absolutely. They're masters at poking holes in the prosecution's case and raising doubts about intent.
It's a real legal battle, for sure. But before we jump into that whole tug of war, let's take a closer look at some of those common defenses used in murder and manslaughter cases.
Sounds good to me. It's like you're trying to read someone's mind, right?
Yeah.
Trying to figure out what they were thinking at the exact moment the crime happened.
Yeah, and how do you prove that in court? It's not like there's a mind-reading machine or something.
Nope. No mind reading machines yet. It often comes down to, like, piecing together clues, looking at the evidence, what witnesses say, maybe even the defendant's past behavior, trying to build a picture of their state of mind.
I always been curious about those insanity pleas. How does that actually work legally?
Yeah, the insanity defense, that's a whole other rabbit hole.
Yeah.
It basically argues that the person who committed the crime, they couldn't understand what they were doing was wrong because of, some serious mental disorder.
So they're saying they were, like, out of their mind.
Kind of, but it has to be way more than just saying that. You need, like, serious proof, psychiatric evaluations, expert witnesses, and usually a history of mental illness, like documented before the crime even happened.
So it's not just about saying, "Oh, I was crazy at the time." You have to show that your mental state was a direct factor in the crime.
Exactly. And even then, even if the insanity plea works, it doesn't necessarily mean you're free. Often it means commitment to a psychiatric facility.
Oh, wow. So you could end up spending more time there than you would in prison.
It's definitely possible. It's a tough situation, legally and ethically.
For sure. So, okay, that's one defense. What other tactics do defense attorneys use in these kinds of cases?
Well, self-defense comes up a lot, but it's not as simple as it sounds.
Yeah, it's not like in the movies where you can just, shoot anyone who looks at you funny.
Right. To claim self-defense, the person has to prove they were in real danger, like they were facing a threat of serious harm. And the force they used to protect themselves, even if it was deadly force, had to be reasonable.
So, like, you couldn't use a bazooka to stop someone from stealing your wallet?
Probably not a good idea. The force has to match the threat. And then you have those stand your ground laws. Those get pretty controversial.
Yeah, I've heard about those. What are they exactly?
Basically, they say you don't have to retreat from a dangerous situation before you use force, even deadly force. Like, you don't have to try to run away or de-escalate the situation.
I can see how that could be controversial. Does that make people more likely to, jump to violence?
Yeah, that's a big criticism. Some people say those laws encourage people to use force when they could have avoided it. It's a complex issue, for sure.
Sounds like it. Okay, so we've got self-defense, insanity. Any other common defenses in murder and manslaughter cases?
Well, there's impairment. Like, if someone was under the influence of drugs or alcohol.
But doesn't that just make you, like, more guilty?
Well, it's not that simple. It might reduce the severity of the charge, like maybe from first-degree to second-degree murder. The argument is that the person wasn't thinking clearly. Their intent was messed up because of the drugs or alcohol.
So they're saying, I was so wasted I didn't know what I was doing.
Basically. But it's rarely a complete defense. It doesn't erase responsibility for their actions.
That makes sense. So we've talked about proving intent, all these different defenses. It's a lot to take in. But in the end, it all comes back to that burden of proof, right? Like,
Yeah.
Proving beyond a reasonable doubt.
Absolutely. The prosecution, they have to prove that the defendant is guilty. Not just that they caused the death, but that they did it with the right mental state. Like, was it intentional, reckless, or negligent? And it all has to be beyond a reasonable doubt.
It's like solving a puzzle, except the stakes are way higher. Like someone's life is on the line.
Exactly. And remember, the defense, they're going to try to dismantle that puzzle. They'll question everything, trying to create doubt.
It's a high stakes game, that's for sure. Okay, so let's talk about the penalties. We know murder and manslaughter are serious, but how does the legal system actually decide how long someone goes to prison?
Well, the penalties, they're supposed to reflect, how bad the crime was and how much the person is to blame. First-degree murder, that's the most serious. Intentional, premeditated, we're talking potential life in prison, maybe even the death penalty in some places.
That's heavy. What about manslaughter?
Manslaughter penalties, they kind of depend on the type. Voluntary manslaughter, those heat of passion killings, those usually get a shorter sentence than murder, but it can still be a long time. And then involuntary manslaughter, that's more about recklessness or negligence, so the sentences usually fall somewhere in between.
And vehicular manslaughter.
Yeah, vehicular manslaughter, that's a whole other category. It highlights how dangerous driving can be, especially if someone's been drinking or using drugs.
It's a reminder that even everyday actions can have serious consequences, like getting behind the wheel of a car.
Yeah, it's a big responsibility, and the law takes it seriously.
So, in those vehicular manslaughter cases, what do they have to prove?
Well, they got to show that it wasn't just an accident, that the driver was being reckless or negligent. They'll look at things like how fast they were going, if they were drunk or high, what witnesses saw. Even the condition of the car can be important.
Wow, so it's like they're trying to recreate the accident, figure out exactly what happened and why.
It's kind of like that. They're trying to determine if the driver's actions were criminal.
It's amazing how these cases they dig into like the deep parts of human nature, anger, fear, recklessness, but also compassion and mercy sometimes.
Yeah, it's not just about the law. It's about understanding people, why they do what they do.
It's about those gray areas we were talking about earlier.
Exactly. There's always more to the story than meets the eye.
And that's what makes these deep dives so interesting. We're going beyond the headlines, looking at the real stories, the complexities of the legal system.
And trying to make sense of it all.
Well said. But hey, we still have a ton of stuff to cover. Like this article about the battered woman syndrome defense, that one really caught my eye.
Oh, yeah, that's a fascinating one. It's a perfect example of how the law tries to understand complex human behaviors.
Battered woman syndrome. Now, this is where things get really interesting to me. I was reading about, women who've been abused for years, and they end up killing their abuser.
It's a tough situation for sure.
Like, you'd think it would be a clear case of self-defense, right?
You'd think so, but it's not always that simple.
So why not? What makes these cases so complicated?
Well, the law it's trying to understand the psychological impact of abuse, like how it can affect someone's actions.
So, like, someone who's been abused for a long time, they might react differently to a threat than someone who hasn't?
Exactly. It's like their perception of danger gets warped because of the abuse they've suffered. They might see a threat where others wouldn't.
So they might feel like they're in danger, even if there isn't, like, an immediate physical threat.
Right. Their past experiences, they shape how they see the world, how they react to situations.
That makes sense. But how do you prove that in court? I mean, abuse can be hidden. It's not always obvious.
It's tough, no doubt.
Hmm.
A lot of times it comes down to expert testimony,
Yeah.
Psychologists or psychiatrists, they can explain how domestic violence affects people mentally.
So they can explain how the victim's past trauma might have led to their actions.
Yeah, they might present evidence of the abuse.
Hmm.
Maybe the victim tried to escape before, or they might talk about the psychological damage the abuse has caused.
It's about helping the jury see the situation through the victim's eyes.
Right.
Understand what they were going through.
Exactly. It's about challenging, those traditional ideas about self-defense. The law is slowly starting to recognize that self-defense is not always a reaction to an immediate attack. Sometimes it's a response to years of trauma and fear.
That's a powerful point. It shows how, like, legal concepts, like intent and self-defense, they're not always so black and white. They have to adapt to the realities of human behavior.
And that's what makes this whole area of law so fascinating. It's constantly evolving, trying to find that balance between, upholding justice and understanding the complexities of human experience.
This deep dive has really made me think it's easy to, like, judge these cases from the outside, to label people as murderers or victims.
Right. But There's always more to the story than we see at first glance.
These cases force us to really look at ourselves, at society, at how we define justice.
And to acknowledge that human beings are complicated. We're all capable of good and bad.
Well, this has been a really, really eye-opening conversation. We've covered so much, from the legal definitions of murder and manslaughter to the psychology behind these crimes.
It's been a deep dive in every sense of the word.
And as we wrap up, I'm left with this question. How do we, as a society, balance the need for justice with the understanding that people are complex, that they make mistakes, they do terrible things, but they're also capable of change and redemption?
It's a question that challenges us to think critically and compassionately, to approach these issues with nuance and understanding.
And on that note, we encourage you, our listeners, to keep exploring these topics. Don't be afraid to question your own assumptions, dig deeper into these cases, and engage in those tough conversations about justice, responsibility, and what it means to be human. Until next time, keep those minds curious and stay safe out there.